In today's show, I'm going to be looking at fantasy points leagues. Michael Bolton, he wants to hear about it.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. People have been asking for it. Josh, do more Points League content. So here it is. The vast majority of people who follow me and watch me and listen to me are players that play category leagues. The vast majority of players that play fantasy leagues in general are category league players. But there is a growing amount of people playing points leagues. And something that someone pointed out to me that I never really thought about before, because in the past I've shit on points league a lot, because for me, as someone who's played this game for a long time, who literally does it, I'm going to say, I won't say 24/7, but at least 18/7, they are less challenging. For me, there's less to talk about because it's simple. Like, you average 30 points, you average 28 points, I'll take the guy that gets 30 points. Like, in general, it's pretty simple in that regard, right? But the people who are playing fantasy points leagues in general are beginners, and beginners are going to have the most questions. So catering a little bit more of the content towards those guys makes a little bit more sense. So that's what I'm trying to do here. This show's it's going to happen once a week. One of these mini shows, 10 to 15 minutes, and throw what you think here. You tweet it at me, drop it in the Discord, put it in the YouTube comments below. What do you want to see different to what I do? Now, don't answer that yet because you haven't seen what the show is. But that's sort of what I'm trying to do, is do something to help people that are in points leagues, because I do understand that there are a growing number of them, and there's a bunch of them that have found this channel, so I do really appreciate that. So let's have a look at what I'm doing here. Let's have a look with Yahoo standard points. We're going to look at ESPN standard points as well. Now, if your league has something crazy, like my league has 22 bonus points for a triple-double and minus 0.69
Giggity
for every field goal missed and minus 22.78 for an ejection, I can't help you with that. I simply can't. Basketball Monster can. We have an ability to customize the settings for your league, for projections and all that sort of stuff. But I can't possibly talk about every single format. So I'm going to do default Yahoo points and I'm going to do default ESPN points. I've got more thoughts on ESPN coming later. So let's look at some guys who are rostered in under 70% of leagues on Yahoo, who should not be. Mason Plumlee, the Plumster. He is, at the moment, the 77th ranked player. He's averaging 30 fantasy points per game. I think he can do that, if not more. And he's rostered in 51% of Yahoo leagues. There's no reason for Plumlee, even in a 12-team, 9-category league, he shouldn't be on a waiver wire. But in a points league, it's malpractice. He needs to be rostered in every single one of those. So should Darius Baisley, who's had one good game, one average game, and one shit game. But he's still the 98th ranked player. He's still averaging 27 fantasy points so far this season. And I think he could be a guy that pushes to 30 fantasy points. Remember, the Yahoo default scoring system rewards volume scoring. It doesn't give you a penalty for poor efficiency. So that is helpful if Baisley has those poor shooting nights, and he's going to get lots of shot attempts and lots of minutes. So that works out pretty well. I think we've also got to look at Alec Burks. Yes, Burks is dealing with an ankle injury, but he's the 62nd ranked player so far. He's averaging over 33 fantasy points per game, and maybe he loses value and quickly comes back. Maybe he is traded at some point. Maybe he is marginalized at some point. He has had consistent injuries throughout his career as well, which is a concern. But he's a 62nd ranked player. He's available in 47% of Yahoo leagues. You got to have him at this point, and then you can figure out the rest later. Because at the moment, if you're getting him off the waiver wire, it's free. Dylan Brooks. I don't like Dylan Brooks' game necessarily, but with Ja Morant out, with Jaren Jackson out, with Justice Winslow out, he's going to be starting alongside Tyus Jones, Kyle Anderson, Grayson Allen, and Jonas Valanciunas. He's going to take every shot in the world, and he's already the 54th ranked player, averaging almost 35 fantasy points per game. There is zero excuse for Dylan Brooks to be on any waiver wire, probably even in 12-team category leagues, but in a points league, no way. You cannot have this guy sitting on any waiver wire. Make sure that he is not. For guys that we want to drop, the Spur, Duncan Robinson. Good real life player, solid enough in categories, but he's the 168th ranked guy so far in points leagues because he hits threes, and that really doesn't mean that much for a points league. Sure, it gives you 3 real life points, but when you're not doing anything else, there's just not enough there to get excited in him. He just doesn't do enough. He's probably like a 16-team points league guy and not a 10 or definitely not a 12 at all either. So not really any value in Duncan Robinson. So he's a drop. Sergio Barker's an interesting one to me. He's the 87th ranked player so far. He's averaging 28 fantasy points per game. So that would make you think he's a 12-team league guy. And I agree to an extent. I wouldn't just be dropping him for nobody, but he'd be on my list of guys that I'd consider as a drop. Now, he's rostered in 79% of leagues, but what he is doing at the moment is shooting 71% on his twos, and that's going to come down. He's not going to continue to be that good of a shooter, and that means his scoring output is going to decrease, and that's going to push him probably more to being a 21 to 22 fantasy point per game player, which is fine, but in general, streaming that spot through probably has a little bit more value. Serge is more of a drop in a 10 than a 12-team league. Let's hit the music for this one.
The Word.
Hassan Whiteside's the 191st ranked player in Yahoo points leagues. He's playing 14 minutes a night, and while Luke Walton claims it's because of a calf injury in preseason, which he actually had, that's why his minutes are low. The reason his minutes are low is because he's bad. He's not good. He sucks, and he should never be getting 20 minutes a night, really, on this team. Now, I thought that there was a chance of that because Walton's terrible, and the Kings are a terrible organization. But they have made the correct decision here. They made the correct decision with drafting Tyrese Halliburton. They made the correct decision with playing Tyrese Halliburton, and they've done it again with Whiteside, which is kudos to them for doing that. Whiteside, he's just taken up a roster spot. He's rostered in 90% of leagues, and there's absolutely no reason for it.
Hands off my cock.
The Italian cock Danilo Gallinari, he is the 177th ranked player so far. He's only played the one game. He is likely to come back for Wednesday's games, but given his value is in category leagues tied to high free throw percentage volume, that just doesn't really translate across to a points league. I think he's more of a 22 to 23 fantasy point per game player like Sergio Barker. And while that's not an automatic drop, it's at least someone that you have to pay attention to as maybe someone you get rid of and not hold on to for dear life. Let's talk ESPN. Now, I want to say a couple of things. Now, I do work for Yahoo, obviously. I don't really have much to do with their fantasy product in terms of I don't organize anything there. They don't ask me opinions. I don't do rankings. I don't do anything like that for them, right? But I don't see any reason why, outside of me working for Yahoo, I'd say this anyway, why you would play a league on ESPN. There is zero justification. They are slack as shit with their fantasy product. There are plenty of players who actually are playing rotation minutes in the NBA who you weren't even able to pick up. It took until the preseason to pick up Facu Campazzo. It took until I tweeted about it to be able to add Jay Sean Tate and Dean Wade. Other guys aren't there yet. Killian Tilly, he's not available. Adam Makoko, who literally played in the league last year, is not available to add. Max Strus is not available to add. Now, these don't mean anything to most people, but it's just a lack of effort and a lack of attention. And these roster percentages make no sense at all. Why the hell is the tank Tom Bryant? Why is Tom Bryant rostered in 53% of ESPN leagues? He is the 102nd ranked player so far. He's going to be better than that. He's averaging 27 ESPN points per game. He shouldn't be on any single waiver wire. And that is not even the most outrageous one that's there because Coby White is rostered in just 59% on ESPN. Now, he's the 121st ranked player at all, but this is either people there are super reactionary or they don't understand value. He's averaging 25 ESPN points per game, and ESPN's format does include efficiency a little bit, so that does have an impact on some of these guys. But this is a 30, 35 point per game guy. There's no reason he should be sitting on any of your waiver wires. And it looks like a lot of people on ESPN just don't have IR, apparently.
Maximum Derek.
Because Derek White is rostered in 16% of leagues. I cannot explain that to you. I know he hasn't played a game. He's probably a week away. But even if you don't have an IR, you add Derek White, you take the loss for a week, and you see what happens. But that is insanity. You get a top 70 player for free. You do it every day of the week, and that's exactly what Derek White is probably going to be this year. That makes no sense. And Mccall Bridges is rostered in only 63% of leagues. While he's currently the 59th ranked player so far this season, what's he doing on the waiver wire? I know he's better in category leagues, but 59th is nothing to sneeze at. Is your league a 4-team league? That'd be the only excuse for him sitting, are the vast majority of ESPN leagues 4-team leagues. So that's the only excuse for him sitting on the waiver wire. Bridges is averaging, what's he averaging so far? 35 points per game on ESPN. He needs to be rostered in all of those formats. Now, if we have a look at guys to drop, guys who are rostered in too many leagues, Lou Williams is rostered in 77%. He's averaging 18 fantasy points per game. I don't think he's going to be a top 150 player this year. Not really sure what we're doing with him. Sergio Barker, despite starting out the season well, he is the 76th ranked player, 31 points per game, as I talked about on Yahoo. I think that's going to fall. He's not someone that I'm holding on to for dear life. And the same goes for Hassan Whiteside, who is actually the 214th ranked player on ESPN, and he's rostered in 81% of leagues. Makes no sense at all. But the last one I want to talk about is Delon Wright, who's rostered in 74% of leagues and just lost his starting spot to Josh Jackson. And even so, he's only a 24 ESPN point per game player. That's not that great, and I think that's probably going to trend down. Now, like a Barker, he's not a must-drop player. He's someone that you can consider as a drop and someone that you might want to move on from if that right player is available to you, but not someone that needs to be held on to in as many leagues as that. Other guys on ESPN waiver wires, which are insane, OG Anunoby is rostered in 38%. Darius Baisley in 24%. Wendell Carter in 27%. Alec Burks in 31%. None of this shit makes any sense. Please have a look at your waiver wire and try and make sense of it and add those players. That'll do it for my mini little points show. Please tell me what else you want on a points league show. Remember that I do a sell high show, I do a buy low show, and I do include points leagues players in that as well. And I do include waiver wire players in that too. I do a points league mailbag article for Yahoo. I do a points league waiver wire article for Yahoo as well. I do points league weekly format video for Yahoo. I do a lot of points league stuff. But tell me what else you want me to do in this show, because I find it harder to talk about points leagues in general, just what info do people want, because to me it's this guy's averaging a lot of points and therefore he's a good fantasy player. But tell me what you want. Tell me what sort of stuff you'd like done on here. And don't forget, subscribe. Tell your friends. Give it a thumbs up. Leave a like. 5-star rating, Apple Podcasts, all of that stuff, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.